Today I'm going to be cooking Albanian food. I'm starting off with Tavë kosi, maybe pronouncing that wrong. It's essentially a lamb yogurt casserole. It apparently originates from the Ottoman Empire, so they marinated lamb in a spiced yogurt and then they actually end up using the leftover meat from that and the leftover yogurt and cooking them together. I'm using lamb shoulder for the dish and I'm just cutting all the chunks off because it's cooked as little chunks rather than one big bit. And please don't judge my butchering skills because I don't have any. I'm frying it off in flour like I usually would. I'm not sure if I found a few different variants where people did different things. Some people boil it first apparently before putting it in the casserole, some people don't. I'm also going to be cooking the whole thing with the bones as well, just to add a bit more flavour, because what else am I going to do with a load of bones? But basically I'm just browning the meat for use in the casserole later. Browning the meat just helps it keep the flavour in and also gives it a bit of a crust. Next, I'm just frying off a bunch of garlic. Garlic is a very important recipe, as it is for a lot of Mediterranean countries. And also garlic is amazing. So is there really such thing as too much garlic? No. After I've just cooked that down, I'm just adding all the lamb back in. And then I'll just be topping it up with a bunch of water just to cook that through for a while. Most of the recipes I found recommend letting it cook for about an hour, but my family very much prefers meat on the very soft side, so I cooked it for a bit longer. Because I actually browned my meat with a bit of flour, which I probably wouldn't have done it doing it again, but it thickened up a bit. This was the result after 2.5 hours, so all the bits of meat had, the tiny bits of meat left on the bone, were basically falling off, which, oh, by the way, tasted amazing. Weirdly enough, tasted a lot like beef tongue, if anyone has ever had that, but it was awesome. But I just took those out, so just leaving the stewed meat that had just been softly cooking through, basically. The other part of the dish is rice, so I have a bunch of long grain white rice, which also has a bit of wild rice and karmagu mixed in. Thought that would be fun. So I'm just adding that raw rice into the casserole and just mixing that through because I'm about to put it in the baking dish. So the yogurt mixture, it basically follows kind of a simple roux sauce recipe. So in the bottom I melted some butter and also I used a bit of a sauce from the lamb just because it was basically had same thing. Mixed in all the Greek yogurt. Traditionally I think they'll use sheep's yogurt, but Greek yogurt is also fine. And then mixed in a bunch of beaten egg. And then this is, I can never remember what I grew. It's either marjoram or oregano. They look really similar and I always forget which is which. I'm just picking a bunch of it. Traditionally used oregano, but they are extremely similar herbs, and they look very similar. They're both members of the mint family. But I think it might be marjoram, which is slightly weaker than oregano, so that's why I'm adding it now, because oregano is a bit stronger. It's just a bit more resistant to cooking and retaining that flavour than marjoram is. Again, not 100% sure which one I have. I think it's marjoram. I did identify them at one point. I just cannot remember, and I just really can't be bothered to double check just because they are so similar and it means going outside and it's cold. But I'm just adding that in now and just mixing it through a little bit. And now I am spooning on the yogurt egg mixture. I'm just spooning it on with the label just so it doesn't break through the layer below, just so that it kind of sits on top. So with the egg in it, it kind of is like a souffle type mixture, I guess. And then I am just going to grate nutmeg on the top, and I have a bunch of fresh nutmeg, so I'm just grating as much of that as I can. I actually picked up this nutmeg in Tanzania, so very happy to finally be able to use it. Very exciting. Fresh nutmeg is just, it's so fun to work with. And then I am just shoving it in the oven for about an hour. And in the meantime, I'm going to start working on the speca me gjizë. Peppers stuffed with cream cheese, cottage cheese, that's it. I'm using Romano peppers. All of the images I could find used the nice long, not necessarily long, but angular peppers, and these are the closest that they sell. And also they come in some really cool colours. I'm also adding into my mixture, I'm going to be adding some chopped tomatoes, so I'm just chopping that up. Recipes vary for this again. I think traditionally in Albania and also quite a lot of Eastern Europe, they do preserve a lot of things, and this method, and one thing I see in Eastern European stores quite a lot, is jars full of peppers stuffed with that cottage cheese. It's a way of preserving them. So I'm cooking down onion, garlic, tomato, dried oregano, and then I'm going to be adding my cottage cheese. So rather than adding like traditional English cottage cheese, I'm actually using tvorag. Tvorag is a Russian cottage cheese type thing. It's the curds. It's curd cheese. It's basically like cottage cheese but with the liquid removed, which is probably more traditional to what they use in Albania anyway. So I just mixed that through it, and now I'm stuffing the peppers with it. Awesome. This was actually quite a fun process. It took a bit longer than I thought, but it was good fun trying to get all the measurements right. If I had smaller peppers, I probably would have stuffed them without cutting them in half, but this also looked quite cool as well. So I don't even know how the process of like preserving them in a jar works. Like, does cottage cheese preserve things, or is it there's like oil around them? I don't know. Next time I'm in the Eastern European shop, I might pick up a jar and see how it like compares, because I assume it's from, never actually checked what country those jars originate from. Anyway, I'm then going to be roasting them in the oven after covering them in loads of black pepper, basically. But I'm just going to roast them alongside while I am cooking my Tavë kosi. And there's the Tavë kosi out of the oven after an hour, and it looks a lot like lasagna or moussaka. It kind of just looks like one of those creamy dishes with that browning. So beautiful. And here is the finished product with the roasted speca gjizë and the Tavë kosi. I'm pronouncing that as fast as I can in the hopes that it makes it sound better. And apologies if I'm butchering the pronunciation. But there it is. It really, the lamb and the rice. Oh, it was so beautiful. The yogurt on top kind of like rose a little bit, kind of like a yogurty souffle, and the peppers, they were nice and sweet with the cheese inside. It was really lovely, but it's very like reminiscent of Eastern European food, which speaks to my heart. And now I'm moving on to the shendetlie cake. So this is, largely speaking, kind of a standard cake recipe with a bunch of walnuts mixed in, quite a lot of eggs and honey, and quite a lot of butter actually. To be fair, I am rubbish at baking, so I don't even know what a standard cake recipe is, but I mean flour, sugar, eggs, butter. The proportions seemed a lot wetter than I'm used to. Well, not wetter, it was very like you can see it's very dry, and then I add in the eggs, but there's no like milk like you usually would with a cake. Yes, milk is the other ingredient cake usually has, so you see it's very dense. I had to like squish it into the pan rather than pour it. But I trusted the recipe I was using. I decided not to mess with it, especially since, like I say, I suck at baking, so me trying to improve on a baking recipe is probably going to cause failure. And now I'm making the sauce to go with it. So, syrup. So I'm using sugar, 2 cups, and 1 cup of water to that, and then adding in a bunch of cloves and lemon juice. In hindsight, I probably would have used a sugar with a bit of molasses in, so demerara or something, just because the end result is obviously clear syrup, which it's a bit lame looking, but now the recipe is specified well, and to be fair, it soaks into the cake anyway, so it doesn't really make much difference. It just looks a bit weird having like a clear sugar syrup, which makes it feel less weird. But after the cake was done, I stabbed a bunch of holes in it. You see, it's quite like a dense bready cake, I suppose, but it's interesting texture. But I stabbed a bunch of holes in it. I did it with a bigger skewer just because the cake doesn't look as absorbent as like the typical cake I'd put syrup in. And then I'm just pouring that nice clovey, vanilla-y syrup on top to let it soak in, which it did quite quickly, to be fair, I guess, because it's quite a thin syrup. And there you go. That is the shendetlie, and I just decorated it with a bit of flowering currant flowers and violet flowers. And it was a really, really nice cake. It was definitely like denser than normal cake, but also really, really, it was still very fluffy, and the walnuts were just perfect, and a bit of honey, and so beautiful. I really liked it. I mean, can cake be bad, but like nut cakes are just, I think they're really good. So this was really nice, and it was also quite easy to make, so I would highly recommend trying it.